tours in 8 states, trips to Ireland and Scotland. This past weekend, got back, or last weekend, from a trip to haunted Gettysburg. We did a bus trip there, so I've enjoyed doing ghost hunts, renting out places like Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Very cool place. I rent out the Ohio State Reformatory. I rent out Zor Village. I've done events down here at Sister Century House Restaurant. I've rented out the USS North Carolina battleship for a ghost hunt. The guys are always into that. That's fun to do. And again, like I said, I do trips to Ireland and Scotland. So I'm thrilled that you guys are here tonight. Because the more energy we've got, the more energy it seems like they want to see as well. Because they, quotations, are attracted to our energy. And they are attracted to little kids. Are you excited? Are you frightened? Oh, you shouldn't be. Oh, he's so cute. You're so cute. All right, so weird things do happen on our walking tour. I have been doing these for 19 years. I would not do them if they were not fun and things did not happen, because it would bore me as well. So, what have we seen on the walking tour? We have captured things on film. Orbs, streaks of light, mysterious mists when no one is smoking, odd and unusual shapes in the cemetery. Did I mention we're going to a cemetery tonight? I mentioned it now. How many of you have been in a cemetery after dark? Oh. How many of you have legally been in a cemetery after dark? Because now I know who the troublemakers are. All right, I'm remembering. I will show you how to use dowsing rods tonight in the cemetery to find unmarked graves. I've been doing it for almost 30 years. It's very, very cool. Another thing that we experience on our walking tour is some strange smells. The smell of pipe smoke, the smell of lavender and lilac when I tell a certain story in the cemetery. So we do have different things happen like that. Personal experiences count too. People have had their hair pulled. They felt fingers run down their face. Sometimes when we're standing in the children's section of the cemetery, it feels as if a little kid's tugging on your hand. Pretty creepy, right? So, I welcome you this evening, and I've handed out some ghost hunting meters amongst the group. If you have one, hold it up, turn it on. All right, there should be a little button there on the side. The light should be green. Okay? That means we're cool. We're chill. Nothing's happening. It's not detecting any energy. What? You have red? Battery's dead. Oh. Yeah. Now that I have your trust, okay, because I could have played that the other way. I could have said, oh my God, it's a poltergeist. But I didn't. So trust me. If you see me run tonight, I will run. If you see me run, you better be right behind me, okay? Now, these are EMF meters, electromagnetic frequency detectors. They detect energy. Ghosts and spirits are energy, okay? If I would grab one of these meters and shimmy up that pole and aim it at that light, it would change colors, the meter would, because it's detecting electrical energy. Anything within 5 feet of this, electrically wise, is going to set it off. So there's going to be false positives if you're standing next to something that's turned on. But if you're in the middle of a cemetery and there's no electricity around and that puppy starts changing colors, what do? What? No. No, but that would be fun to see. We're going to just stand there and we're going to start taking photographs around us, okay? So when this comes off of green and goes to yellow, start snapping some photographs. Are we good? Yes. Everybody understands me? Everybody trusting? It's not going to rain. So we're going to head off to our first stop. Are we all set? All right. I hate to miss the music, but for those of you that have taken my walk before, anybody? Okay, a couple different places tonight. First of all, I want to welcome you to this lovely little town. I lived here when this was a village. I lived here for 18 years, and then we became a town. It was a big deal, right, Emily? It sure was. I started originally holding ghost tours and ghost walks here 19 years ago. And the building that I began them in is the warehouse on the canal, right behind us here. Built in 1906 as a furniture store, owned by the Shipwrek family. You might have heard of that name if you live in Massillon, because I believe there's a Shipwrek road down there. The brothers owned this building. They made furniture. They made beautiful bedroom furniture, and, drum roll, they made caskets. Because if you were a good woodworker, and you were a really good woodworker, you could make beautiful caskets, and they sold them here. Now, there's been ghosts sighted in this building since long before I started working in it, back in 2003. Footsteps, shadow people, the smell of somebody smoking a pipe and nobody was smoking in the building. Now, it's not always been what it is today. It's basically not too much of anything. You have the casket making company, the furniture making company. You also had a antique store in here in the early 2000s on the first floor. You had a doll baby hospital. Where, yes, I know that's weird, right? If you had dolls that had cracked faces, maybe porcelain, they would restore them here. There was a pawn shop inside. There was a hair salon inside. The hair salon. The hair salon often reported that their radio would turn on and it was always on country music. They'd switch it off country music and it would go right back to country music. On the first floor, they saw shadow people quite often. Down in the basement, in the early 1900s, it was a mortuary. This town was a happening place back in the day. 12 saloons and 4 mortuaries. That's a lot of drinking, and that's a lot of dying. So down in this basement, this was the O'Brien Slider funeral home back in the day. When the influenza epidemic broke out worldwide, and of course it affected Canton and Canal Fulton and Massillon as well. This is 1917, 1918. People died so quickly that they didn't have enough time to have proper burials. The bodies would start decomposing so quickly, they needed to do something. They ended up putting them on blocks of ice wherever they could, usually in the basement of factories. If you're familiar with downtown Canton, there's a building down there called the Hercules Engine Factory. Anybody familiar with that? That basement was an ice making company, and they stored bodies from the epidemic in there as well. This basement, I remember reading a newspaper article where they had the dead bodies stacked up like cordwood, like firewood, in the basement, awaiting proper burial. One of the most physical things ever in my career as an investigator happened in this building. I was getting ready to do a dinner and a ghost event. It was 2005, and I was doing a brief walkthrough of this building before any of the guests got here, just to make sure everything was off the steps so nobody would trip. As I was descending the staircase, going down into the old mortuary, a hand grabbed me in the middle of my back, like this, and pulled me back on the steps, and I sat down. I turned around to yell at the human who did that to me, because there was only one person in the building yelling. There was nobody behind me on the stairs. And I often wondered who that was. Was he preventing me from falling down the steps, perhaps? Maybe giving me a warning? We'll never know. This building here, this beautiful, beautiful Victorian home, Queen Anne style, give me a year. 1864 on this building here. This is called the Robinson House. It was also called the Christmas House at one time due to the Christmas family. Now, Emily has worked there for years, and you have said you've seen shadow people.
Yep, shadow people. If you're by yourself, you steps upstairs. If you're upstairs, you do stuff down.
You hear
All the time,
footsteps.
especially if there's a new purple moon. That's usually when you get more things. We have a new employee, and this week he goes, I'm not ever going to be here by myself till there's a moon. Because I swear to God, there's people upstairs that are there's just people walking. It's cool. Nobody's going to get hurt.
At any time you have a house like this, a beautiful house, and you start to renovate it, it can really pick up the energy around you. Because these people have been in this house forever. All of a sudden, you're ripping out cabinets, adding a new roof, putting a new doorway in. They don't like it. Activity's going to increase. So there you have two really cool buildings right across from each other. Our next stop is in town, and I'm going to tell you the story about the grave robbing Dr. Dissinger, who used to be the doctor here in town. All right. Don't let these beautiful painted buildings here in Canal Fulton fool you, because even the beautifully painted ones like this all have a dark history to them. Now this building was built in 1842. This is Doc Dissinger's house. Doc Dissinger was a local town doctor. We have an engineer in the group. Oh, there we go. I found it. Thank you so much. Doc Dissinger was the town doctor, so he delivered babies, he pulled teeth, he did amputations here, he took care of the townspeople. Yeah. Now, he also had a couple of bad habits. He liked to drink booze, medicinal purposes, right? And he also liked to do after-death exams or autopsies back in the day. Now, this was back before there were any laws about bodies being exhumed, all right? You could go out and you could do horrible things in the cemetery before they outlawed it. So Doc Dissinger was taking care of a young boy over in Rogues Hollow, about 10 miles from here, if even that. Rogues Hollow's in Wayne County. Rogues Hollow was a really bad place to hang out because they had at least 8 saloons at the time Doc would go there. So Doc Dissinger was taking care of this little boy. This little boy became ill, and he passed away. The family begged him not to do an after-death exam because he was super curious what happened to this little boy. Well, Doc agreed. He said, well, I won't do that after-death exam. So they went ahead and they buried the boy. The next day, Doc had a change of heart. He got his horses, he got his carriage, he went all the way out to Rogues Hollow, and he and his assistant dug up the young boy, put him in a wagon, and started to come back here to do the after-death exam. Doc got thirsty. Remember, he had a bad habit about drinking. They stopped at one of the saloons at Rogues Hollow, and they had 1, they had 2, they had 3, and then Doc started talking about the young boy in the sack that he had out in his wagon. A couple of the regulars decided to play a trick on him. So they went out, they snuck out there while Doc was still inside. They took the boy out of the sack, and they climbed inside the sack themselves. As they started down the coach route from Clinton back here, that sack started moving, and Doc, I'm sure, screamed like a little girl. They went back, they got the young boy, they did bring him back here, and they did do the after-death exam in this home. This was also Doc Dissinger's home and his office. The room that he would do his procedures in and his autopsies in is now the kitchen. If you can imagine sitting down there to have a bowl of cereal, thinking about what happened in this building years ago. Psychics have seen a small child in this building wandering around from room to room to room. So we believe this to be a very active building. It will be curious to see how they renovate it and what it turns into and its new lease in life. All right, we're going to walk off to our next stop. Well, bankers and grocers here in town, they had a lot of money. And they built this grand home, and out here on the front was their veranda. This is where they would sit. They would sip tea and coffee. I'm sure Mr. Sullivan would have his brandy out, and I know that he smoked a cigar because I have seen photographs of that, and on occasion while we have been standing here, people have smelled the scent of cigar or pipe smoke. One night in particular, I even smelled it, and I was kind of freaking out, and then I realized my candle lantern had caught on fire. So the pine scent that I was smelling was from that. Now this building has been many things. Back in the day, it was not only the Sullivan's house, it became a mortuary. Again, another mortuary here in Canal Fulton. As a matter of fact, it's located down where the children's department is at now. How weird is that? If you know which door to open up down there, you can look in and see the remnants of a bricked up crematorium oven. Now, strange things have occurred in this building. When the cleaning crew has been here at night, they've heard footsteps upstairs, and they've dashed up there thinking somebody was trapped in the library all evening, and they've never found anybody. They've heard the sound of chairs sliding around on rollers upstairs. Now, even the librarians have said that they have seen oddities, shadow people in particular. Tall, slender-looking shadows that just kind of stalk around the wall, and then they disappear among a stack of books. Many years ago, I was doing a free haunted walking tour for the library teenagers. They hated me. I made them shut their cell phones off. I said, you got to pay attention to what I'm talking about. And they were all upset about that, but they were good sports. We were standing here in front of the library. I was up here, and they were facing me. And I was telling them about the ghostly happenings here. And one boy in the back screamed and pointed up at this window. Illuminated in soft background light was the image of an older woman in a white shift of sorts, or a nightgown. But she screamed when she saw us as well. The cleaning crew's wife had come that night to help him, had heard the noises out here and had looked out the window, and she just had one of those big white-looking scrubby outfits on. Screamed at us and screamed at us. I'll tell you what, those kids paid attention to me. So if you get a chance to come back here during business hours when the library is open, feel free to go down to the basement where the mortuary was located at. There's rocking chairs down there. You can sit. You can pretend that you're looking at a children's book, but I want you to look out for the shadow people because they do see them quite often. All right, that's my story for the Canal Fulton Public Library. We're going to walk back into town for our second stop, or our third stop, actually. Town. Back in the day, not because it's a tattoo shop. Back in the day, back when the Erie Canal cut through town in 1825, this was the bad part of town. This is called Brimstone Corners. The reason, this was a saloon, that was a saloon, that was a saloon, and guess what was over here? Saloon. A saloon. So the streets were made of dirt. The sidewalks were wooden slats, like something out of the Wild West. You had canal workers. You had coal miners. You had farmers. You had people that drank a lot. So there were fights, arguments, stabbings, shootings. What a glorious town this was back then. Lots of excitement going on. Now, if you got kicked out of one of these bars, you could simply walk to the next one and continue to drink. Altercations would happen. That's a fight. Fight would happen. People would get murdered. If you had enough money to pay off the owner of this bar, you could use his tunnel downstairs. If you had a body that you needed to dispose of, you could drag that body through the tunnel. It led directly over there to the basement of Sister's Country House Restaurant, where there was another crematorium oven waiting. You could pay off the guy over there and incinerate the body. You didn't have a body, you didn't have a crime, right? Lots of nasty stuff happened here in this town. Now, who did all this fighting? The Germans. The Germans would fight the English. The English would fight the Irish. The Irish would fight anybody because they're Irish. Okay? Now, I'm Irish, so I can say that. These canal workers that would come into town, they were ready to fight and they were ready to drink. They were paid 25 cents a day to work on digging that canal out. And we'll be stopping down along the canal in a few minutes, and I'll tell you about all of the unmarked graves down there. So unusual activity is happening in a couple of these buildings. I'm not going to tell you which one. So now you've heard about Brimstone Corners here. We're going to walk about a half a block, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Sister Century House Restaurant and the ghost in the basement and the ghost upstairs. Behind me was designed by a woman, which is the cool thing at the turn of the century. This is the Blank House, built in 1901. The ghostly activity in this building is minor on the ghost level scale. It's down here. Shadow people, footsteps. Back when this was the Chamber of Commerce for the town of Canal Fulton, Donna had her office just through these doors here, and Donna would hear this big, heavy door swing open, swing closed. She'd hear footsteps. She'd get up from her desk, and there would be nobody there. Footsteps again have happened upstairs. So on the fright scale, not too impressive, but the building that is very impressive is behind you. It is not the bar that has the green light there, although there are spirits that have been known to walk out that door. We had a guy walk out there one night with a beer glass, and he stood there and he goes, "Hey, is that the ghost tour?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he goes, "My glass is haunted. Everything I put in it just disappears." Whatever. Okay. So the building I want to tell you about is to the left of the green light. It is Sister Century House Restaurant. You can see it written on the canopy. They have their two windows there decorated up for Halloween. That building was built in the 1870s. It has been a store. It has been an apartment building. It has been a restaurant. It has been all kinds of things since that time frame. In the basement is a tunnel. That tunnel comes catty corner across the road, right over here to the basement of that tattoo parlor. It's closed off, and no, we're not going to go in it. It's closed off. You can only go back in it maybe 3 or 4 feet, and it's cinder blocked up now. The ghostly activity that has happened in that basement throughout the years, the help has confided into me since the early 1990s that they don't like to be in the basement, especially the women. The ice machine is located in the basement, right where that crematorium oven is. How weird is that? So, some of the help would go down there, they'd get a bucket, start scooping for their ice, they'd be bent over, and if you were a female, you would have that happen. You get a hit, a tap on your butt. Needless to say, that's the reason why a lot of the women, the girl servers, didn't like to go down in that basement because of the creepiness down there, and they didn't like to be touched. On the first floor, they have a very tall, slender, dark shadow who creeps around. In the kitchen, coffee pots have come right out from the coffee pot holder and dropped right on the floor. Salt and pepper shakers have moved around. They've had all kinds of poltergeist activity. It is really an intriguing building. Upstairs, where that air conditioner unit is sitting, that's where Ashley used to live. Now, I told you guys about that teenage tour that I did for the library. I got them over here, and I hadn't told them the story yet about the building. And this little kid in the back raises up his hand. He's like, hey, scary lady, I got a story. I said, what's your story? He said, well, my grandma and grandpa used to live upstairs there, where that box is, right there in the window. He said, my grandma and grandpa used to tell me about the little girl that they would see dressed in a white dress. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. So then I would go into the story that I was about to tell them. When Ashley lived there, Ashley was woke up one night in early 2006 by the feeling that somebody was watching her. At the foot of her bed stood a little girl in a white dress. So that's what I like to see. I like to see the repetition of these haunts and of these ghosts. 2 different families have claimed to have seen a little girl upstairs. It's truly an interesting building. If you get a chance to come here, they have been voted best breakfast in the county numerous times, so it's really a good place to get a pancake and hear a story about a poltergeist. All right, we're going to be off to our next stop. We're going to be walking down along the Ohio River Canal. Scots Irishmen mostly dug this out by hand. 309 miles. Cleveland, if you're directionally impaired, north, south, all the way to the Ohio River. This was basically the ditch that opened up commerce to the frontier. You could put goods on here, cigars, wheat, straw, to the Mississippi, all the way down to New Orleans. So this was a very important part of Ohio history. But there's a dark part to the history as well. These banks over here, these banks hold unmarked graves of the Scots-Irish immigrants that dug out this canal. Why? They were paid about $0.25 a day to work here. There were no antibiotics back in those days, so if they cut their hand, or they got hurt, or they got sick, they could die. Back in those days, you had to pay to be buried in a cemetery. In most cemeteries, if you didn't have enough money, what are they going to do with the bodies? They're going to take those picks and those shovels, and they're simply going to bury you along the banks of the canal. It's estimated that there's a dead Irishman for every mile of canal. That's the legend. That's the legend. 1 mile away from here, south. If you're local, you know it as Loch 4 Park. Has anybody been there? You've heard of it? All right, here's the dark history associated with that park, and it's tied to the canal. Back in the late 1800s, word got out that the railroads were going to be coming through here, and the canals were going to be canceled. One man on a canal boat down there at Loch 4 went nutty. He went crazy. He was a worker on a boat that was carrying containers of acid. He picked up one of the small barrels, took the lid off, and flung it among his worker friends and on himself. Now, nobody died immediately. This was a horrific death. This was acid that ate down through the skin into the bone and caused them to die right down there. It's said if you go down there at night and you sit and wait, that you can hear the cries and the moans of the men from years ago. If you're from the Cleveland area of Ohio, you might be familiar with Psychic Sonia. Psychic Sonia was down here one night, and she swore it was the most evil place that she had ever been in her life, and she has refused to come back. I myself haven't had too much happen down there. I've captured some unusual voices, some EVP, but that's about it. I welcome you to come back during the day and check out Loch 4 Park. I wish we could walk down there, but it's a mile down, which means it's a mile back, and that ain't happening tonight. I'm going to tell you guys a story here in a few minutes. We're going to walk just a couple hundred feet. I'm going to tell you about the witch of Canal Fulton. It's not me. It's all right, good, good. I want to apologize tonight if it seems like I'm faltering for words. I had 2 strokes earlier this year out of the blue. So you know how you get that brain fog a little bit? So if I look off in the distance, I'm not looking at an apparition. I'm just trying to recall the word that I need. So thank you for being so patient tonight. Where you are standing right now was the site of the old Walser Exchange building. This was a hotel that catered to the travelers on the Ohio and Erie Canal. Now, Emma Walser was the daughter of the Walsers that owned that building. Emma was about 13 years old, and her best friend in town was the town witch. Now, every town has a witch, right? At least one. Ours was Mrs. Sourwine. Honest to goodness, that was her name. She's German. Sourwine. Miss Sourwine, if you saw her in town, you crossed to the other side of the road. You saw her, you made the sign of the cross. You wouldn't look at her directly because word is out on the street that she could turn you into anything that she wanted to. She also had the ability to turn herself into a black cat. Not just any type of a black cat, but a black cat with eyes that glowed like the embers of hell. All right, a black cat. A black cat. Well, anybody knows that if a witch talks to you and gives you directions to do something, you should pretty much follow her directions because you don't want to get on the witch's bad side. So here you have Emma, 13 years old, and you have Mrs. Sourwine, the town witch. Mrs. Sourwine confided in Emma one night, and she told her, she said, "Emma, I have buried sacks of gold around the foundation of your parents' hotel. Nobody knows about this but me. So I want to make this pact with you. On the next full moon, I want you to come out here, get a shovel, get a sack, have a lantern, and when nobody's looking, I want you to dig up those sacks of gold, and I will split them with you 50-50. Well, Emma couldn't wait. She couldn't wait until the next full moon. She got a sack. She waited till her mom and dad went to bed. She had the lantern. She had the shovel. She made the mistake of telling her boyfriend. Her boyfriend knew. So they were down here under the darkness of night, the full moon in the sky, that shovel ready to go down into the dark, deep earth, and they heard a meow behind them. Behind them, sitting right over here, was a black cat with eyes that blazed like the embers of hell. They took off and they ran. Word on the street is that gold is still buried under our feet here, somewhere. So here's my deal with you all. The next full moon is Thursday. All right, if you come back out here and you find something, I get 50% of it. Now, I've never told anybody this before. It's just our secret. All right, our next stop is at the Pioneer Cemetery. We will be going into the cemetery. I will be showing you how to use dowsing rods to find the marked graves and the unmarked graves. But this is also the point of the night that if you don't feel like walking 4 blocks uphill, you don't have to. You can simply walk right back into town and depart from here if you'd like to. How many of you want to head to the cemetery with me? That's going to be the cool spot. We've got some activity that has happened up there. I can't wait to share it with you. So we're going to go ahead and walk. We got several blocks uphill, but then it will be downhill on the way back. Yes. Funky showing up in our photographs and us thinking that it's some type of ectomist like in Ghostbusters, okay? So we're not gonna smoke. This is the old Pioneer Cemetery. It dates back to the early 1800s. There are various dates as to when the first burial took place. There are many children in the cemetery of the pioneers. There are women that died during childbirth as well. A few years ago, I was standing here and we had a psychic with the group. We had not entered into the cemetery yet. And she stopped me and she says, "Oh my gosh, I'm hearing the old song, Waltzing Matilda." Have you ever heard of that? It's a very old, I don't know, 1890s, 1900s song. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda. Anyway, she goes, "It's in my mind. Is there anybody buried here by that name?" And I said, I'm not sure, I don't know. Well, don't you know, directly ahead, and with the headstone flipped away so that we could not read it, Matilda was buried there. I thought that was pretty cool. Unusual things have happened in this cemetery. We have smelled over by the very tall grave back here. I'll show it to you in a minute. We have smelled lavender and lilac around Maria's grave. There are no flowers in that area. We have recorded on audio, on phones. We've recorded children's voices and children laughing in this cemetery. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to walk you in and follow me. I have the dowsing rods. I'm going to tell you about Madison, and then I'll tell you. We're doing this almost 30 years. I have worked for cemetery associations. I have doused a veterans cemetery at Johnson's Island and had it backed up with ground-penetrating radar. I have worked in the city of Greene, dousing a housing development where they found graves as they were building the houses. Anybody ever see the Poltergeist movie? Yeah. Interesting. All right, so let me show you how you hold these. And basically, you're going to find what you're looking for, what you're concentrating for. If I was walking around here looking for water, does anybody have a bottle of water? No? Okay, if I was walking and looking for water, I would be able to find water. I do not care where water is tonight, so I'm going to think about bodies. I'm going to think about graves. Almost like they're magnetized, and you're going to feel them sometimes tremble in your hands. And as soon as you step over the body, they're going to open right back up. Okay? Michaela's group, where are you at? Come over here. I'm going to make willing victims out of you. We're going to try to get you to do this with me. Okay? So you're going to need 2 hands, 2 rods. Okay? All right. Michaela, do you want to try it too? Oh, I'm good. You're good? Okay. Folks, come on over this way. Right here with me. Okay, I want you to hold the rods out in front of you. And we're simply going to walk towards Madison and think body, 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 body. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Good, good, good. Okay, now step back off of little Madison here. And they should open wide. There you go. There you go. Down. Come on over. All right, body. Slowly. Feel that? Okay, feel that tug? Okay, and then step gently back. They're going to open up. Now, the more you do this, the better results you're going to have. 80% of people have the ability. Come on over here, let's give you a shot. 80% of people have the ability to do this. So just concentrate. Body. There you go. Bingo. All right.
What is going on?
Okay, so this is awesome. 80% of people have the ability. But I have found in my research, if you are a CPA, anybody a CPA? If you work in a bank, if you work with numbers, if you're an engineer, you're going to be off a little bit, okay? Not off a little bit. You are so left-brained that you can't quite open up to have this experience. So, in this cemetery, there are many children buried. Madison, go ahead and hand them out. Madison is buried here. Madison was 3 years old and drowned in the Tuscarora River, okay? At times, when we turned our recorders on, we have recorded the sound of children giggling in this area, kind of creepy. But I love Madison. Sometimes people say, how can you do what you do in the cemetery? And I said, you know, the bigger crime would be to never mention this boy's name. And there have been thousands of people that have stood here and heard about Madison's story. And I appreciate you guys coming into the cemetery with me. So we've had unusual activity throughout the area. Back here in this corner is a very tall stone. It's the tallest stone here. It's the grave of Maria. That's where we have smelled scents of lavender and lilac. And Maria died at a very young age. Now there are unmarked graves here as well, and that's where these rods come in handy. Not only can you find marked graves and bodies, but you can find unmarked graves. In other words, like right here where this grass kind of dips down in here, I am going to bet that there's probably a body in that area. I'm simply going to walk, and wherever it crosses, I know that there's a body. Why would there be unmarked graves? I'm going to turn everybody loose here for about 10 minutes. I want you to explore. I want you to concentrate. Think body. And why would you do this? You can find your septic tank. You can find your sewer line. You can find your water line. You can find where you buried your dog, where you forgot you buried your dog. There's lots of applications for this. Does anybody else need rods? Would you like a set?
I can't hold a flashlight and do everything.
Well, I got the flashlight.
He's not paying attention. Walk.
Yeah, there's a bunch of mosquitoes over here.
Yeah, it just went in my mouth. Considering walk up to the grave. Hold them out. Now scoot up. Because they're going to cross.
Well, he's probably not thinking what he's supposed to.
Well, we're wasting our time.
Yeah, so just film you.
Wow.
Okay, now back up.
Now back up. You're supposed to leave them up.
You need to keep them held up, bud.
I don't know what just happened.
You're not doing it right.
Over there. I ain't going back there. Let's go back.
I'm going over here.
Okay, follow your mother. Put them down and follow mom. Got one behind you, just so you know.
What?
You got one behind you, just so you know.
That's a stump.
Oh, well, either way, you got something behind you.
Here. Okay, move, Bum. You've been a natural with them. Yep. Right.
Back up.
I may have to get you to carry the dowsing rods more often. I believe. Come, Ryan. Mosquito. They crossed?
Yes, they did. Already.
What were you thinking?
I said bye. Oh, I'm sorry. That's weird.
So we're going back down there.
Come here. I need a flashlight.
Here, you can have the good one. Here, give the good one to Mom. I'll give you yours back. Here. Hang on. Here you go. There's yours.
Come here.
This is a place I'd come back.
Oh, yeah. You okay?
I'd be better here.
I'm kind of trying to follow where you're walking, so.
Hi.
No.
Nope. Stay here.
Me?
Right here.
I know. I got you on camera.
Hold the flashlight.
Well, say hold it. Ryan, come here. You don't need to go up there with Mom. She's just turning those in. So this would be a fun one to come back to.
I'm training him. You gonna come back and help me in about 10 years? All right, okay. So folks, we're gonna end a walk here, but you're gonna follow me back to the corner in a second. The building behind us, 1824. This is the oldest commercial building in town. This was built as a general store back when the canal workers were coming through the area. Now, Brian's family bought it about 15, 16 years ago, and Brian was a handyman. Yeah, how about that? He would come down here, and he was doing some renovating for his family because they were going to turn it into an art gallery. So Brian would be working right down here, and he would be, with a table saw, he'd be cutting 2x4s, he'd be doing drywall late at night, and Brian would hear the sound of somebody running upstairs. Freaked him out. First night that happened, he grabbed a 2x4, he ran up the staircase. He's going to take care of business. There was nobody up there. Second night it happened. Guess what he did? Ran upstairs with the 2x4, looked around, and saw a shadow walk into this last room right down here. He walked into the room, nobody was in there. The next night it happened, he didn't even bother going upstairs. He figured out that they were just going to have to learn to live together. There's a lesson in this. Anytime you renovate, anytime you paint, anytime you change things around in old houses, you can juice out the paranormal activity because of changing what they are used to. You've all seen those old movies where a ghost walks down through a hallway and disappears into the wall. Maybe back during his time, there was a doorway there, and he's just following that pathway that he was used to. Somebody moved in and put up a wall. So now you've seen the oldest building in town. It's got new life being breathed into it. It is the Dragonfly Winery. So I suggest you that are of age come back and partake of the spirits and enjoy this building.
May I interject? As of December of last year, that man is still walking in there.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Have you?
I personally saw him, and he was in this room. And he walked straight across, and right where he walked, there was boxes. So there was no way a human could walk through.
I love that. Hi. How are you doing? Do you mind? You don't mind if I gave you a little promo tonight? Now, aren't you going to do an Airbnb here?
We have one on this side, but it's
this
front
side.
window that's the front top.
Okay. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Tiffany. That is cool. Yes, please come back when they're open during the day and check it out for yourself, and maybe do the Airbnb. That would be very cool. All right, folks, we're going to walk back to the corner here. Keep an eye on your meters. We're going to walk over top of the Tuscaloosa River. Here, Bum. He can walk up front with me.
Okay.
Yeah, come
I'll
on.
walk up with
Take
her.
your meter and you can walk with her.
You can walk with me. Love to have you with me. Also, if you're a fan of Destination Fear, I did a show with them. It's in rotation right now. Be watching, I think it's Travel Channel, because I'm on Destination Fear with Dakota and Chelsea and Tanner, and we do the West Virginia Penitentiary Inmates Cemetery. About the Oberlin House. Very old building up here. It's painted blue. It's right here on Cherry Street. I used to do it on the walking tours, and I stopped because it didn't seem that much active. The Oberlins came from Pennsylvania by ox and by cart in about 1840. They settled here in Canal Fulton. They lived in that house. They built that house. She delivered babies. Mrs. Oberlin was a midwife. She took care of women. Unfortunately, a lot of the babies died, and they're buried up there in the Pioneer Cemetery. So that's my little brief synopsis of the Oberlin house. But I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Check your photographs. Look for all those creepy things. If you see something and you're not sure, feel free to email me. I'm also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and all that good stuff. Social media, ain't it grand? I hope you enjoyed tonight, and early happy Halloween. Thank you for coming. Thank you.